Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second ACTI-X webinar today. My name is Peter Meyer. I'm a project manager at LSEC and your today's host. The topic of today's webinar is From Policies to Predictions, the Future of Access Control in ACTI-X. In case you haven't heard about ACTI-X, ACTI-X is a European cybersecurity project that started in January this year, and we are building an AI-powered threat intelligence platform. One important module within this ecosystem is access control. And this part is managed by our project partners, Nitro Agility from Italy. Please welcome our speakers, Nicola Gallo and Antonio Radesca, who will give some insights today. Nitro Agility itself is a technology consulting and software development company. The company is developing a tool called Permguard, a solution for advanced authorization management. It is designed to support secure, dynamic, and auditable access decisions for users, applications, and systems. Nicola Gallo is the co-founder and CTO of Nitro Agility. He is a software architect with more than 15 years of experience across security, platform engineering, and enterprise technology. He is also co-chair of the Trusted AI Agents Working Group at the Decentralized Identity Foundation. Antonio Radesca is a software entrepreneur, solution architect, and founder of Nitro Agility. He has over 20 years of experience designing software and enterprise software, cloud-native platforms, and SaaS solutions. He's specialized in scalable distribution systems, mobile applications, AI-driven solutions, and digital transformation. Before I hand over to Nicola and Antonio, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Please enter your questions into the chat, and we will get back to them at the end of the webinar. Please keep in mind that the meeting will be recorded and made available on our YouTube channel. Nicola, Antonio, your stage. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. I am Nicola. So today we are going to talk about policies and how we are planning to use them in ACTI-X project. So first of all, in ACTI-X project, we are using as a component Permguard. Permguard is a tool that we have developed as Nitro Agility. You can find more information about it on www.permguard.com. Most of its code is open source, so you can find all the source code in GitHub. There is the Permguard organization, and in it you can find lots of repository. The main one is the Permguard one. There are two different types of edition for Permguards. There is the community edition, that is the one that we are using in ACTI-X. Then, of course, we are also implementing an enterprise version to be used for more advanced use case for enterprise company that needs custom enterprise control planes. So, so what is it about? So, Permguard allow you to write policies. At the current stage, we are using CEDAR as language, but we are agnostic. We can use any type of policies. What you need to do is just to create a custom plugin and start integrating your policy language. In Permguard, everything is treated as a zone. So you have your security zone. In the security zone, you can define your ledger. The ledger, essentially, they are your policy stores. And those policy stores contains actually the policies that, as we said, in this case is CEDAR, but it can be extended with other plugin. To implement the policy storage, we are using an approach which is implementing a Git-like object storage. So in this way, in a native way, we've got also versioning, auditability. So we are able to look at all the policy, look at the history of the policy, understand why do we have this policy, who created them, and we are able also to manage them. In general, Permguard enable centralized governance, because using Permguard is possible to define your policies. You have a central store where there are all those policies, and you are able to control the flow of the application. In the past, all the applications that were implementing the authorization logic in the application. But there is a problem, because if the authorization change and policy must change, the user, the developer, is required to change the source code, test it, deploy it once again. But if you want to actually have proper governance, where at runtime you can manage the policies, this is not a valid approach. That's why in the industry lately you are finding lots of products that are trying to build the next governance framework with different type of policies. The idea is that any application act as a policy enforcement point using an SDK. We got SDK for multiple language. It's possible to contact the Permguard server and evaluate the policies. What is the important thing about this? Every time we evaluate policies, we are able to emit decision logs. Why those decision logs are important? Because every time the application is enforcing policies, we are able to emit those logs. Those logs, they are able to trace whatever is happening in the application. So we have a central storage where we can aggregate all the decision logs. So this become an interesting component that allow us to aggregate the decision, look at them, and understand if there are security risks. So why this is important for ACTI-X? This is important for ACTI-X because, as we said, we are going to be able to include this governance layer. So the identities and the decision, they are going to be governed. So what we are trying to do is to build a platform where we can define the identities, define the permission attached to those identities, and to be able to define policies and attach those policies to the permission. In this way, we are going to be able to create proper governance. As we said, the execution, whatever is executed in the platform, is going to be converted in logs. We are not going to need to build and deploy every time we change policies. And of course, also human operator will be able also to look at the policy, understand what's going on, understand what's the behavior of the application. What we are going to do? So first of all, the plan for ACTI-X is, first of all, to onboard the Permguard project. So onboarding the Permguard project, we are going to be able to externalize the dynamic execution of the policies, because the policies, they are not going to be anymore embedded in the system. We are going to have common decision logs across all the components, because here there is another problem. Let's suppose a company has lots of application. Each application may be logging information in a different way. Whilst having Permguard as the central point of the governance, we are going to be able to make sure that all the log from all the application, they are going to be using the same format. And this is where we see an opportunity of improvement, because at the current stage, there are not standards, or at least widely adopted standard on decision logs. The decision logs will include the subject, so who has been doing what are the resources that are participating to the operation, the action, and so on. And as we said, we have multiple language. Probably in ACTI-X will be using Cedar, but if it will be required, we will be also able to create a new language, also maybe a custom language using JSON format, but this will depend by the use cases. And what we are going to do in ACTI-X. So in ACTI-X, we are going to extend Permguard with the decision log that are going to be interpreted by machine learning. So what is the idea that we've got? We got Permguard, we got decision logs. What we want to do in ACTI-X? So in ACTI-X, we want actually to collect all those logs. We want to build a machine learning algorithm in a way that we can start aggregating those logs, starting to look at them, understand if there is something which is anomal. And once we got information of something anomal happening, so essentially there is a cyber threat, what we want to do is essentially to convert those cyber threats to sticks and send them to OpenCTI. So what is the things that for us is innovative and is relevant? For the first time, we are going to look at each event is going to become a decision logs. Of course, we cannot convert each decision log to a sticks object because it will be useless. We will need to convert just the cyber threat. So we are going to create a pipeline that is going to read those logs, is going to apply the machine learning, and if there is any cyber threat, is going to publish it. So essentially, we will have the policy engine, which is the Permguard policy engine. We are going to emit decision logs. This is what actually already exists. So up to here, Permguard exists already, is open source, and is already working. So in the scope of the project, what we want to do is to make sure that those decision logs can go through risk analytics and machine learning pipelines. Once those pipelines have been executed, we are going to be able to detect anomaly, apply risk scoring, clustering, correlation, and so on. We are going to create a CTI normalization layer where we are going to be able to map those output with sticks objects, send them to OpenCTI, and then make them available for taxi collection. So this is essentially what we are planning to do. So in this way, as we said, decision logs, they are not just audit trails, just logs that are there and someone has to look into it, but become part of the application. So we are going to be able to capture how the policy are applied at runtime. We are going to be able to connect identity, resource, action, context, outcome. We are going to expose the recurring access pattern and abnormal behavior. We are going to create a common telemetry layer across the component because all the decision log, they're going to be the same across all the component. And they are going to allow security decision that become analyzable data. So what is the outcome? We are going to aggregate, normalize, elaborate, and as soon as they become a cyber threat, to publish them. So in our view, as a potential with integration in ACTI-X, we are going to, as we said, we are going to use Permguard to transform the selected access control decision in reusable cyber threat intelligence. So the policy logs, they are not going to be left there as a single events, but we are going essentially to integrate them in the ACTI-X project and enable cyber threat. So this is the first part of the presentation. So I'm going to hand over to Antonio. I'm going to stop.
Hello, nice to see you. Now I'm going to discuss a bit more in depth some of the concepts that Nicola already exposed. Particularly, we will see which other parts compose the Permguard ecosystem, because as you understand, Permguard is not just a technology, but it's a complete ecosystem that contains a lot of interesting things, particularly the decision log that we are going to integrate with machine learning. And we will see also which is the role of CEDAR, what is CEDAR, a quick primer, very quick primer, and some other interesting stuff. So first of all, the first question could be how we are going to integrate Permguard in our application. So Nicola said that it's possible to use the open source domain-specific language Cedar. By the way, if you would like to integrate the application, Permguard comes out of the box in the open source version with some SDK. Are available SDK for each programming language, the most common programming language that we have using at the moment in our server-side application. So for example, Java, .NET Core, Python, Node.js, Golang, and finally Rust. If you are going to try those SDK, you will see that they have a common interface. That essentially, if you are going to learn how to code the Permguard application using Java, you will see that moving to the same SDK in Rust or Golang is going to be extremely simple because there is a unified interface that essentially refers to some gRPC API that internally Permguard uses between its own components to manage the data. So, Nicola already said something extremely important. So, the possibility to essentially enable decision log. So, we have the Permguard platform with PDP and other components. We have the SDK. Another part, as Nicola said, is decision log. Later, we are going to see which is the format of those decision log and which is the impact. But why decision logs are so important? Are extremely important, as Nicola said, because essentially permits to our architecture, to our distributed application, to enable an event-driven system, where essentially we can consume our decision log as events, and eventually we could, for example, republish on a message middleware. This could be Apache Kafka or RabbitMQ. From this side, we could move all the data and convert them, as Nicola said. We are going to convert, which is the result of our decision log, first of all for machine learning, but also for to be able to be consumed by OpenCTI, STIX format, and taxi format. So essentially, decision log permits us to enable and to do extremely powerful and interesting things. And now we are going to see which is the format log. By the way, it's very, very important to understand the fact that Permguard permits us to code our policies. At the moment, we can code our policies using the domain-specific language, declarative language Cedar. This language was created by AWS, and they made it open source and reusable however we want. There are even portings of Cedar in different programming languages. The original version is done in Rust. By the way, this specific language is quite simple. Every Cedar policies is composed by 3 sections. Essentially, the permits deny section. As you can see here, we have a policy that essentially says that only the owner, well, in this case, the owner should be Alice, could access the resource doc123 and could make the action view. So essentially, the 3 parts of this are the permit deny section. There is the next section that specifies which are the data that we are going to use, and one section that specifies the condition where we are going to use Cedar. Of course, Permguard, when we are going to manage, to evaluate a request, is able to process all multiple Cedar policies. So in this case, we have a platform that is extremely powerful. And as we said, the difference between Permguard and the other solutions that usually are proposed in modern system is the fact that we have a centralized governance, and we have the possibility to change whenever we want our policies without, for example, to recompile entirely our project. Usually now the security, the authorization part is hard-coded in the system, and also a lot of platforms propose this approach, but this is not so convenient, especially if you need to react quickly to a potential threat. So, characteristics of Cedar is a declarative language, domain-specific, created especially for policies. It's quite simple, but very, very powerful. It's very readable and expressive, as you saw is composed by just 3 sections, and with those 3 sections you can express everything you need in a very, very explicit way. Is a domain-specific language. What does it mean? That was created especially to resolve one single problem. In this case, the problem of the authorization. Testable. Everything could be tested without any problem, and very, very simply. Last, and probably the most important, is that we are using a programming language that essentially not only is open source, but could be in a simple way embedded in our application. With Permguard, this is even more simple thanks to the architecture and to the SDKs. Now, let's see an example about how it works internally Permguard. So, on top right, you can see the format that arrived to the Permguard server. So the policy decision point. The policy decision point, what is? Is a part of Permguard, a server based on gRPC, that essentially take a request, pass this request to the internal engine where there are the setter policies, and say if this action is permitted or not. In this case, we are trying to book something on a website. Our application, through the Permguard API, this SDK especially, pass the request to the policy decision point that emit a permission or a deny. In this case, the policy enforcement, of course, is left to our application. So it's the application that is responsible of this. In the request, we can collect a lot of information. Some of them are standards and required in case of Permguard. So, for example, we should specify which is the principal, which is the subject, which is the action, and which are the resources involved in this request. But we have a section that is the context that is extremely powerful. It could be managed to contain every information that could be relevant in our request, and eventually we could like to collect for our, especially for security concerns. So, for example, we could collect the IP address, we could collect the place, the departments of the user, and all the metadata that we need that could represent a value when we are going to speak about security and threats. Now, if we think about a platform of this type, you could think that essentially as every platform could be attacked, as every technology could be attacked. In this case, which could be the risks connected to authorization platform? First of all, we could create policies that are not correct. For example, if instead of, if I forget to specify that in the previous case, the folder could be opened only by the owner, and I forget this, everyone could open the folder and read the data, and this is not acceptable. So essentially, we should pay attention to how we define our policies, and we should control that our policy definition are correct. Next, we should pay attention to the data that arrive us at runtime. So, for example, if my request arrive from a strange IP address that is not the internal IP address of our company, this could represent a problem. Next, we should check also the decision, in this case, our decision log, because maybe it could be not normal that arrive 10 requests in 2 seconds, and those 10 requests in a human-oriented interaction are accept all of them. So maybe somebody was breaking our system and giving access to an application that is doing something that is not permitted. So essentially, these are the major risks that we should observe and manage when we are speaking about the development of the application and the application of authorization rule to our applications, also in the case of Permguard. Now, let's see in detail which is the format of our decision log, because we saw that essentially in a Permguard request, in the context, we could add a lot of interesting stuff. Okay, whatever we need and we think that is relevant for security and to manage the threats, we could add it in Permguard. All those data after are used to be evaluated and to emit a permit or a deny, And on the other side, those data are also managed in the decision log. Essentially, the decision log doesn't give us just a yes or no about something what we can do, but permit us, first of all, to manage and to evaluate multiple requests. This is an interesting feature of Permguard that permits to increase the performance. But as you can see here, we have a typical format of our decision log. Essentially, we track from which zone is arriving the request, which is the policy store that we are going to use during the evaluation, because Permguard permits to manage multiple zones, but also internally multiple and especially different policy store. We can see who is the current user that is using our system. Okay, and Permguard shows us all the data that were submitted, okay, during the evaluation. So who is the subject of the request, which is the type of resource that we are trying to access, and the name eventually, the ID, and next, which is the action that we are trying to do. And also, okay, of course, the response, because it's important to understand what was happening. And of course, as I said, the context. The context is something that permits us to enable and to make extremely powerful what could be the cyber threat detection in our applications. So, after this, what we can do, what we have in our decision log. We have the decision, we have the rationale, so why our decision was taken and which was the context connected. We have the list of the people that were involved in this request. We have essentially the effect of the result of our request. We have, of course, the timeline, and we can essentially have some action that permits us to do something else. Okay, as Nicola said previously, the decision log enabled the possibility to manage those events and to make into extremely powerful what is connected to our threat anomaly detection. Now, how connect all of this with the machine learning? Okay, essentially, machine learning is not something new applied to the security. A lot of platforms are using machine learning because, first of all, is extremely performant. At the moment, for example, LLM could be extremely useful in cybersecurity. But the problem is that if you have millions of requests per second, the LLM is not a solution. On the other side, the machine learning algorithms are pretty fast and permits almost in real time to detect eventual attacks to our platform. So the other point is that the machine learning, thanks to machine learning operation and thanks to continuous learning, could be adapted to improve itself. Okay, so we are not speaking about a static application that contains rules. We are speaking about something dynamic, and every time that there is something new to learn, this is going to be extremely powerful. On the other side, the machine learning could consider some context-aware information. So you can see, for example, through Permguard, we can pass information as the device type, the location, the IP address, the behavior. For example, we could have a window, as I said before, where there are too many requests, and this is probably not something that is done by a human. And essentially, we have something that could be extremely powerful, can scale very quickly, is faster enough to process a lot of data, and thanks to MLOps and continuous decision, could be automated even in the step of improving itself. What we are going to do in ACTI-X project connected to Permguard and ML. First of all, we are going to check through machine learning our policies. So we are going to see if the policies could be essentially secure or not. Next, we are going to see at runtime if we have some strange condition. For example, I could have a decision that is permit, but based on my data set, this is something that is extremely strange. As Nicola said, we are going to integrate and transform through a pipeline all the data that comes from the decision log, so that could be, for example, used by OpenCTI and its internal format. Other thing that we are going to study is the evolution of Permguard to manage proximity node. Essentially, we are going to permit the application to eventually, if required, have something that could work not using the central decision point, so the PDP, and could be adapted to work offline and to manage this authorization even in a decentralized way. For example, this could be extremely interesting in the IoT applications, because there the connectivity is not ever guaranteed. So this was a quick introduction about Permguard, its ecosystem, and what we are going to do in the ACTI-X project, and how we are going to extend it to make it a very great product to be integrated in our solution, but also in every distributed system. Now, I don't know if Peter has some question.
Yes, thank you very much, Antonio. Also, thank you very much, Nicola, for the presentation. For everybody who just joined a little bit later, the meeting, the webinar has been recorded, or is currently being recorded, and will be shared on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, feel free to enter them now into the QA session, Q&A function, and we will address them. For now, I would, maybe Nicola, you can also come back to the stage. Yeah, elsewise, Antonio, how does Permguard a little bit differ from traditional role-based access control with only a few extra heuristic models from the rules hold on? So, anything you can share about that one?
Yes, Permguard, let me say, it's totally different about traditional. Yeah. First of all, we have a centralized governance. Second, we can change basically real-time our policies in case we find any threat. Number three, with the introduction of machine learning, we could also manage situations where potential threat is not clearly visible. I give you a couple of examples. Imagine that you have an application where somebody stole your credentials. Okay. So I have access to the platform, and I am somebody that is not legal to access the platform, and I am in another country. Okay. So essentially, thanks to machine learning, we can quickly understand something like this. So we detect that the IP address is something that is not permitted, so we understand that there is a potential threat, and we emit a warning. Another case is what I said before. Imagine that I stole those credentials, okay? And I've written an automated application that, for example, approve automatically every booking. So I do a booking online, and I approve it automatically with an application that I write. If I approve 5 bookings in 3 seconds, this is not something that is done by a human. Okay, so which is the real impact is the fact that thanks to ML, we can detect and enable at runtime pattern that could permit us to intercept even situations that are more complex, and usually we cannot intercept just with Permguard itself, so just with the policies.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think that gives a good insight and overview. You also mentioned a couple of times CEDAR as a language. Could that also be extended and also run outside AWS?
Yes, absolutely. Because essentially now we have CEDAR because it's probably the most known domain-specific language for authorization. But Permguard exposes an interface where whenever a developer wants, can implement this interface and extend Permguard with a new provider. If you watch the format of a request or the logs of Permguard, you will see that there is a storage type. A language type. In this case, there is just CEDAR. But for example, if we could add, if we would like to add JSON, as Nicola said, or cell, we can implement just a piece of code that permits us to evaluate a request using that language, and we are fine. So we can extend Permguard however we want.
Okay, thank you. Nicola, question to you. Policy as code really reflects the need of govern dynamic aspects. How do you see the concept of execution relating to governance and policies?
Nicola, you have the microphone closed.
Yeah. Or the wrong microphone? Yeah.
Hello. So I was saying, in ACTI-X, we are onboarding the Permguard governance, so we are onboarding policies. But if you think about it, systems are executing business logic, are executing computing, okay? So when an application is serving your request, actually there is an execution, and governance is a way to control, govern, and constrain this execution. Likewise, when your system starts to detect cyber threats are the outcome of verification on the execution. So why policies are important? Policies are important because they help to constrain the execution. And in ACTI-X, what we are doing is to help to constrain the execution, help to classify the outcome of this constraint, convert them in decision logs that can be interpreted and validated with machine learning, and emit cyber threats. Then, of course, there are other parts of the execution. For instance, there is all the authority of a request. We are not covering this in ACTI-X because it's not about cyber threat, it's about authority, but it's part of the same problem, because when you create a request, you need to make sure that the execution is valid, is following the right authority from the root of the request, and is going to be intercepted and analyzed, understood in all the part of the system. So that's something else that we are working also in Nitro Agility. It's not part of the ACTI-X because it's not part of the cyber threat, but is connected. So I think the future is going to be more and more about execution, and we can see this with AI agents, because now all people, all companies, they are talking about AI agents. They are talking about connecting AI agent. Of course, AI agents, they are non-deterministic. And there are problems because those AI agents, they are executing. They take input, execute, make decision, and act. So that's why I think over time we will see lots of interest on execution. And that's why I think that the ACTI-X project is important, because it's going to be one of the first to intercept decision log in a structured way, analyzed, and convert them in the cyber threats.
Okay, thank you. In case you have the same application running on two different networks and just using a single application level security method for both networks, how do you handle that?
So this is an interesting part, and probably will be part also one of the use case of the ACTI-X. So what is the point? Let's suppose I have a system, okay? So let's suppose I have an API which allow an user to book a flight. So there is a user request to book a flight. But before to book a flight, there could be another request that will be read the list of the available flight, because I will need to read the list of the available flight. Then once I decide which flight I want to book, I'm going actually to book it. So I'm going to mandate the booking. What is the difference? Reading doesn't cause any harm. The worst case can disclose some information. Okay, and if they are public information, it's not a problem. But booking is an operation which is going to alter the system. It's going actually to book a seat in a flight. So let's suppose this application is deployed in a network, and this network of course, is segmented because you have multiple network, and this happen both for security but also for reliability. Because if one part of the network goes down, the system has to continue to work in another network. So as two different network, they are actually different located. They have actually different hardware. They have different operating system. There are cybersecurity team that are in charge to look at cyber threat. So they might notice that there are some strange behavior in one part of the network. So one part of the network is behaving in a strange way. So they start saying, okay, we are not sure it's a real threat. We need to investigate. And the team is in a position to say, okay, we cannot stop the whole business. We need to mitigate this problem. So if you have a token which say book a flight, and this token reach both the segments, the only way to avoid this booking is happening, because the security team say, starting from now, I don't trust this part of the network to book flight. I would just trust to read the flights, available flight. If I don't think in terms of execution, what I need to do is to revoke the whole token. If I'm not able to revoke the token, I'm going to be in a risky position because I can suffer attack from both networks. So the only alternative will be to switch off the system. But switch off the system will be a disaster in terms of business continuity. Okay, so why this is important? Because once you start thinking in terms of policy and governance, and you start putting in the picture the execution, we are going to be also to do something different. You're going to say, look, do you know what? This token is still valid, but actually I want to stop this segment of the network, and this network of the segment of the network is going to be able to read the flight but not execute booking. The other is going to continue executing booking. How can we do this? With policy. We can distribute policy that are going to allow us to build this governance. In this way, we don't need to shut down the system, so we have reliability. We are going to stop just one part of the network, so we are going to lose just one part of the business, which is a much better solution than stop everything or ignore the cyber threat and wait something that is happening. Because end of the day, if you have a cyber threat anomaly detection, it's because you want to avoid something anomal to happen, not just to certify it. Okay, so that's why I think with ACTI-X we are going to do something that is going to be ahead of the practices that usually company they are implementing. So will be really interesting.
Thank you very much. Looking a little bit about privacy, anonymization. How will the training data, especially, be masked and pseudo-anonymized, anonymized? Maybe Antonio?
Yes. Of course, we should anonymize them because this is required from, for example, from GDPR. But already, as you know, we have a section in ACTI-X that is going to be focused on standardization, and exists some standards about data anonymization. And essentially, what we are going to do is to adopt those standards and technique as k-anonymity to anonymize the data and to be fully connected to the rules that are required. So essentially the answer is yes, and we identified already which is going to be the techniques and which are going to be the standards adopted in this thing, in the ACTI-X project.
Yeah. Talking about standards, this is something that you both are also leading within the ACTI-X project. Anything that you maybe can already give it as an outlook on the project itself and standardization?
Okay, on my side already we identified for anonymization that there are some standards. Now don't ask me are ISO standards, though I don't remember the numbers. This is quite impossible. But on that side we have already ideas about the techniques and the standards that are going to be adopted. Those standards exist, and ISO. Now, I don't know if Nicola has already identified something.
No, so far, no.
Okay. So anyhow, standardization is an important topic within the project. As mentioned, we just started half a year ago, and I think with the next half year, we should definitely come up with a couple of interesting things around standardization. The last thing I wanted to maybe address, you both are also maintaining the ACTI-X GitHub repository. So if somebody comes there, what will be able to find there now and also during the project?
Say it again, because I got problem with the headphone.
Okay, my question was about the GitHub repository for ACTI-X that you guys are maintaining. So
Okay.
the question was, what can we expect there during the project, during the next years? Not now, but maybe by the end of the project, in between.
Yeah. So we created the GitHub organization that maybe would be also worth to share the link. In this GitHub organization, we are going to publish all the components. So step by step, when we develop a new component, we are going to publish them. Of course, the development is also related to the work packages. The ACTI-X project is going to last another 2 years. So step by step, we will see more projects coming in the organization. But for sure, from today is available a project which is implementing the technical documentation. So what is the idea? As we have different work package which include both architecture, specification, and implementation, we are going to document those architecture, those specification in this repository. So in this repository, interested user will be able to start looking at what type of architecture we are building, what type of specification, and this is happening now. So step by step in the next 2 or 3 months, I think there will be some content there. And this will help people to start getting in the project, starting to understand. Then, as soon as we start working on implementation, so the work package, they become more practical with the technical implementation, then you will start finding in the GitHub organization also those implementation. At the end, the idea is to provide a documentation that has to be able to allow to anyone that is interested to read, understand the architecture, understand how to deploy it, look at the code, and experiment, and eventually adopt it.
So thank you very much from my side. No more questions. If you want to learn more about the architecture, I just want to already announce our next webinar, which will be on the 29th of August. So in 5 weeks, again, Friday at 10 o'clock, where our project partners will present what we concept and drafted and where the journey from the architectural perspective will be going for ACTI-X. In case you want to stay informed, feel free to sign up for our newsletter or simply follow us on our LinkedIn page. Feel also free to visit the website for interesting reference and further material. And that's it from my side. So thank you very much for attending the meeting. Thank you, Nicola and Antonio, for presenting and giving us an update about this really interesting and a really important part within the project. And thank you very much. Have a good day and see you back in 5 weeks at the next webinar. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.